There are a handful of warrior societies throughout history, known for using stealth and operating in the shadows or by night. The ninja of Japan, the Hashashim of medieval Persia, the Vikings, and their screaming berserkers. Yeah, we're talking about Assassin's Creed Valhalla today. And honestly, I complained about it in my last video, before the game was out, and I want to give it credit. Let's be real, the premise is kind of ridiculous. I mean, sneaky stealth Vikings? Who does that?
What in the name of Loki do you think you're doing?
Now, I could just talk to you all about what's accurate, what's not accurate, but realistically, there are going to be plenty of people who could make such comments, and I'd like to give you something a little bit more insightful. So I thought I'd talk today about what it takes to adapt a historical narrative into a video game, and what would work or what would not work. Because one of the things I realized very early into seeing this game, now that it's out, is there were choices that the crew made that I am sure they knew were historically wrong, but they did it for a reason, and it works in the context of a video game. Now, this will be a shorter video than last time. To begin with, though, we're going to talk about something known in circles of historical fiction writers as the Victorian nipple ring problem.
I am not amused.
Victorian England is a very popular setting for a lot of historical fiction, and people have a lot of assumptions about how events happened in Victorian England. One thing that people don't often know, or the average person doesn't know, is that nipple piercings were pretty trendy among the aristocracy at the time period. For a writer to address this, even though it is accurate, readers will think it's inaccurate. This is important because, as I was talking about last time in my video on what's gotten right and wrong about Viking stories in the media, people who think they understand history might not actually know what's right, so they have certain assumptions about the time period. In the case of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, there are several choices clearly made based on what people think happened rather than what did happen. When we're talking about adapting a video game narrative from a medieval time period, it's not exactly like you can interview someone or watch footage of the period the way you might for something like Call of Duty. So what we're really talking about is going from this, did I get the camera right? Yeah, to this. But before I get into all of that, if you like this topic, if you like good media about the story behind the story, and you want to see my historical takes, hit like, subscribe, and at the end of this video, I'm going to tell you what my favorite thing about Assassin's Creed Valhalla is, and what my least favorite thing is, which, surprise, they're the same thing. Now, to the game itself. Every narrative video game has to do three things. It has to be fun, it has to have clear rules for winning and losing because it is a game, and it has to tell a story, hopefully a good story. The rules and mechanics of a game are pretty straightforward. Things like, if you hit someone with a sword, they take damage, and if they take enough damage, they will die. Or if you take damage from being hit with various weapons, you will die. Minigames involve everything from drinking to raiding. And some of these minigames are fun and some aren't, but here we run into our first problem. How do you define fun in a video game? It is totally subjective, and that is one of the three things you have to do beyond the mechanics and the narrative. Well, because it's subjective, you market the game to certain people for what they're looking for. So some people are going to play a game for the Assassin's Creed classical stealth elements. Others are coming specifically because they love Vikings. So you really have to make everything serve a greater function of being interconnected. To explain some of this, I'm going to cite the writer Benjamin Percy in his book Thrill Me. This is what he has to say on the craft of writing. Many years ago, I was lucky enough to study under Barry Hannah, whose voice in person and on the page was equivalent to a jazz saxophone
on an ear-burning riff. On the final day of workshop, I asked him if he had any parting wisdom, and he licked his lips and narrowed his eyes, and he gave me the best advice of my life. Thrill me.
With that in mind, let's look at the narrative. The game opens with the chill winds of northern winter, eerie music setting in, and a voice tells you how the world was created.
Heed my tale of time's beginning.
This scene gave me chills. The voice acting and the music and the writing are phenomenal. Einar Selvik of Wardruna did the music, and every part of the music in this game is just absolutely
perfect rhyme and a lovely cadence.
But that opening bit, I felt my hackles rise, and it was a level of commitment that I seldom see anywhere as far as accurately representing the tradition of another culture's mythology and faith. This then transitions into the opening scene where you meet the main character, Eivor. But that opening segment tells you just the amount of research and respect put in, and it lets you know that there is a spiritual, mythic component to the game.
The gods favor you, Eivor. They always have.
Right from the beginning of the game, there's several things done very, very well in the opening hook. It starts out by following Eivor, who, depending on how you play the game, is either a boy or a girl. Eivor's family is from a tribe that is building an alliance with the king.
Oh, there you are, my little dringer. Go. So, you see our king? Yes, good. Come, Eva. Did you find the ring? Yes. Now for our little plan.
As this alliance is built, we follow Eivor carrying a sign of beauty and art and honor, an arm ring, which he is supposed to give to the king on behalf of his tribe and on behalf of his father. And being a child, it's going to be a cute little gesture. Here, in this great hall, we encounter the feast, we encounter songs, we encounter different people talking about the politicking and the major events, and you see people happy. These are Vikings happy. Dancing, singing, feasting, mead! You can never have enough mead, right? And so Eivor gives the ring to the king, their tribes are united, and his father breaks out in a song of victory.
King, may our clans be forever bonded in friendship and love.
Now and forever, I am pledged to you.
Hearken well in Hall of Kings. On ocean steed my words gain wings. Odin's mead I forth will bring. For noble deeds that others sing.
Seriously, Einar Selvik, the guy who did the music for this, is a musical genius. I am just waiting for his Ragnar metal concept album to knock Hamilton out of the park. All of the events give you an introduction to the world, and then are immediately interrupted by an attack. This sets up the main antagonist, who kills Eivor's family, makes Eivor's father dishonor himself before killing him, but then the antagonist breaks his own word. So Eivor and another boy flee on horseback and escape, but while they're escaping in the winters of Norway, they tumble from their horse, fall onto the ice, and Eivor is attacked by a wolf and will forever be known for being wolf-kissed and therefore marked by the gods. This is a great opening. This sets the tone for the entire game. We now know about joy, misery, and battle. We know about the culture, and we learn who Eivor is and what his or her backstory is right from the beginning. let's take just a second to appreciate the multiple levels of symbolism going on here. Now, the wolves are signs of the gods, but also of the end times. Just as the god Tyr's hand was eaten by the wolf Fenris, Ivor's hand is bitten as he scampers, trying to reach for the axe that he dropped. And just reaching for the axe is symbolic, because this axe belonged to his father, who just died in dishonor and won't go to Valhalla. In reaching for the axe, Ivor reaches for redemption, the warrior's life, and also the realm where the gods and the slain dwell together, but where his father isn't. And two ravens swoop in, symbolizing Hugin and Munin, the ravens of thought and memory, who associate themselves with Odin, the Allfather. This is a well done scene. This is brilliantly written and respectful. And let us remember that just as the wolf Fenris is said to bring about the end of the world at Ragnarok, there are two other wolves that are Odinic, Geri and Freki. So just as Odin has ravens, he has wolves. And now we see two ravens and a wolf that mark Ivor. There's a mark across her face. Bitten on the hand, the marks of Tyr, of Odin, the gods. We then cut flash forward, and the game does its sci-fi element of being an Assassin's Creed game, where it glitches out in a weird computery way because this whole thing is a simulation, and the character of Ivor is experiencing the past life of someone in our present day.
Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
This opening thrills me, just as any good writing is supposed to do. Additionally, there's a really cool bit of subtlety where the song glorifying the valors of war and the horrors of actual combat are juxtaposed. And finally, we frame our protagonist as a victim of the attack, so that we're able to preserve these Viking Age sort of, let's just say, less than always compassionate ideals, but still make you really care about this person as an underdog and hate the enemy. This is just well done setup. The next part transitions into the gameplay and combat, and I really want to show you how those all work together now. We fast forward to years later. Again, Ivor is being persecuted by the main enemy from before.
How long have you been chasing me, Wolf-Kissed? 17 winters? 18? You will live your final days enthralled as a slave.
And this is where you learn to have combat. Of course, Ivor breaks out of their bonds and decides to rescue their crew. The combat mechanics are pretty cool. We use axes in the game, round shields, bows, all accurate weapons. Now, the bow would be probably a lot less commonly used in the Norse era of the Viking Age, but it was around. Of course, most Viking archery probably looked a little bit more like this. One thing that doesn't work in Assassin's Creed games entering the Viking Age is assassins were sneaky and did all these parkour mechanics. That's why you see all the parkour in Assassin's Creed the original. If you've never been to Jerusalem, Jerusalem is a city made for parkour. I swear to you, anyone who loves parkour out there, if your politics allow you to fly to Israel, go to Jerusalem. You can run on those rooftops, climb up those buildings. It is meant for it. Viking Age Scandinavia, not made for parkour. Not made for sneaking to the same extent. Yeah, you can hide in the woods, but all of those sneaking tactics of the Assassin's Creed games do not work well in a Viking scenario. So the character hides in the reeds, climbs up buildings, but here we see something where buildings from the Viking Age were a lot smaller. In fact, a major hall might be about the size of a small hut in this game. So Ivor climbs up the outside of a 3-story hall, 3-story building. These are people who built buildings out of axes and their hands. They're not building 3-story halls. So you have to change the history to make the Assassin's Creed mechanics work. And I get that. It's a little bit dumb, but this is what happens when you try to make Ninja Vikings. Seems like a really good point to sidestep and talk about the fact that there are different audiences who play this game for different reasons. So those who come for the Assassin's Creed mechanics, that's easy to market to. But those who want to play a game for Viking stuff, some want the Viking mythology, some want the Viking history, others just want the general aesthetic. There is definitely going to be a market out there for people to play a Viking dating sim where you get to seduce the daughter of someone a few farmsteads over and get a good dowry, but that's not what this game is. What this game does is you have things like drinking games or flighting, which is basically poetic rap battles. And they actually did a really good job of using English linguistics for the poetry, because that does not translate well into how Norse rhyming structures are.
In flighting, it's key to match cadence and rhyme. It's as much about sound as it is about time.
But then you get into things like raids as a mini game, and in the game you're not allowed to kill or hurt civilians. Well, that's what a raid was. So modern ethics do not work well in understanding warrior societies of the past. Warriors were killers. Raiders targeted civilians. And so here we kind of have a bit of a discrepancy.
Yours is a clan of thralls and peasants.
You! Lay that axe aside or die by mine.
You should be on a slave ship to Ireland, Wolf-Kissed. But if you wish to be my first sacrifice, Odin will be more than happy to receive you.
You just killed yourself, Erky.
The first big boss fight also has some problems historically, because we see a guy wielding a double-headed battle axe and a pair of hammers. If you didn't know this, Vikings didn't fight with hammers. Similarly, the double-headed battle axe isn't historically accurate. A lot of the fun in a game like Assassin's Creed Valhalla is going to come from the combat, because fighting is generally what people play video games for, or what they find in video games, because that's what's led to the market. I briefly addressed some of the mechanics of combat earlier, but it's very bare bones. You can unlock certain fighting abilities the longer you play and upgrade certain equipment. Most of the weapons are things you would expect, like axes, round shields. One of my favorite Viking Age weapons, the Dane axe, you can use. Some of the weapons are really inaccurate in some kind of weird ways. And a lot of things like spears and swords you would expect, I haven't seen any sign of. And honestly, as the mechanics go, it's just, you hit the same buttons a bunch. It's fun, but it's not innovative or anything that's going to change your opinion about the game for the better. In my video on Vikings in the media, I complained about an excess of stories set in England. And overall, I stand by that. But one thing that actually really works for setting a game about Vikings in England is the map. At the time of the Great Heathen Army taking on England, there was several Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, and each of these Anglo-Saxon or Old English kingdoms fell one by one as the army moved south. This gives a clear set of goals in a finite amount of space so that players can navigate the map and can have a clear direction of how to get what they need to do in the game. Whereas earlier levels set in Norway, you have to contend with the sprawling map of the fjords, and that is a very great open world scenario. But Norway is friggin' huge. Like, it's insanely big. It's basically the size of the rest of Europe. So for the average player, that can get really easy to get lost and sidetracked and overwhelmed, and it's too big of a map.
Have you spotted something?
Not yet. Well, let us go ahead to clear the path of any dangers. Then follow our lead when the sun brushes the horizon.
Understood. May Thor bless you all on your way.
By having England as a smaller, self-contained island map that gives you freedom to move about, that lets you have a bit of an open world feel, but it also has a clear sense of direction and control. From a gaming perspective, you need those. Those are clear objectives, things to move toward, so you are not just lost wandering around and going, what do I do now? That said, the map is huge, and you are still going to get lost.
This one takes us for a fool, brother. We sons of Ragnar have this well under control.
No, we do not.
Now, I promised I would tell you what my favorite and least favorite parts of the game are. And this is going to be interesting, but it is really that opening scene where they get attacked by the raid. I think that is a great way of introducing the plot, of giving you a sense of what combat, scales, stakes are. You meet the characters, and it throws you right into the world in a really great way.
Skull! Custodian!
So why don't I like it? Let me tell you a very quick story. Back in 2011, I began writing a novel set in the Viking Age that I'm still working on. When I began working on this novel, I did tons of research. I'm still researching it. I've gone to a lot of the locations. But shortly after I began writing it, I was maybe somewhere between 50 and 100 pages in probably. This TV show called Vikings came out. And a lot of the things from the first chapter of my novel happened in the first episode of Vikings. And I kind of felt cheated. Like, I was like, I came up with this plot structure. I thought this was a perfect opening hook for a world. And you know what? They beat me to it because they had all the funding and research crews, and good for them. Similarly, my wife asked me why I don't like the game. And I responded, Chapter 3. In the current draft of my novel, Chapter 3 of my book has a lot of the elements of this opening. Good for the game creators. I would like to think that you had a very strong idea. And you know what? You got to the publishing of your work first, so congratulations. There are other elements that I thought I had never seen anywhere for Viking media that I was going to include in mine, like the flighting. And there's a lot of flighting in this game.
How about another lesson then? A quick flight. Right here, right now.
So that's me being petty, that's me being jealous that they beat me to the point, and that is me acknowledging that they did something really well. So good job, guys. For total disclosure, I did not get anywhere near as far as I would like to in this game to give you a thorough review. But from what I have played, this is one of the better adaptations of a Viking Age video game I may have ever played. There are plenty of issues with it, but for what it is, it's not bad, honestly. Despite them stealing my work. Shame. But now, if you want to play, it's worth your time. Thank you all for watching, and thank you all for your patience for waiting a month between these two videos. I actually started this video about a month ago, and have taken a long time to finish it. And if you're worried, I do wash this t-shirt between clips of shooting. I work roughly around the clock as a freelance writer, and so having time to play a video game or edit YouTube content is a rare luxury. That said, if you're enjoying these videos, leave a like, a comment, share with your friends, and if you are able, I will be linking to my PayPal down below, because I would like to try to make this something that I can do more regularly and can dedicate time to. I will never expect anything from anyone, but if you want to help support a starving writer to break into another creative field, because that is apparently a smart career move, maybe? If you like the content and if you feel like donating, I would be grateful. But of course, no obligation. In the meantime, though, you're going to see another video next week that is not about Vikings, and will cover the other topic I want to talk about on this channel. I'll also be setting up a Patreon in the near future, but that's not there yet. Anyway, again, thank you all. I hope you have a good rest of your week, and if you are celebrating the holidays this season, then may you have a good one. Until next time, cheers.